What's up guys, I'm Maureen Moody and I'm the Curious Stylist, and I want to build your confidence in your career through education and science. So if that sounds like something fun, stick around. So today I am going to be breaking down the steps that I take to do Michaela's basic balayage. The other day Michaela came in and she wanted to get a balayage. She's not had a whole lot of color and I wanted to give her a new summer look. First step for my balayage is I always cut them before I apply the lightener. I find this really helps to put the guest at ease so that if they like their haircut, they already have more confidence going forward because one stage is already completed. So I am using the Blondme Clay Lightener, and the mixing ratio for that is 1 to 1.5. That's the way I like it. I use 40 volume, and as you can see, I start out really slow mixing that product, and as I have it more incorporated with the lightener, I'll go a little bit faster and I'll smooth it out. But it's really important to take your time until it starts to become more like frosting. And as you can see, I like my lightener to be sort of like a buttercream frosting consistency. Okay, so I'm all set there. When I set up my cart, I use a wet towel to wipe my hands in between. I've got my bowl and my 132 YS Park. I use a little sponge sometimes to blend out the product, and my Framar brush with my Framar black paddle. Now, right before I start to do anything, I like to put plastic wrap around my guest as like an apron. It helps to protect the cape underneath, and it really helps to kind of keep everything neatly in one place. Now, as you can see, I am putting my lightener on the right-hand side of the paddle because I am left-handed. Now, if you are right-handed, you're going to put the lightener on the left-hand side of the paddle. This is a diagram of the back basic balayage sections that I generally take the paddle, and then I start to pick up the product, and I like to start in the middle of the strand and then I move up, blending that product up. So as you can see, I'm just taking my time, and balayage is a French word which means to sweep. And as you can see, I'm sweeping that product on and just trying to blend it. Now, as you hold your brush, it's kind of important to keep that brush a little bit more parallel with the hair so that as you are blending it, it blends in much nicer when you keep it flat to the surface of the hair. As I am building the product up, I'm taking my time and I'm laying it down. And as I get closer and closer to the top part of the sections, you can see that I'm diffusing the product so it's not as strong. See, when you are working with 40 volume and balayage lightener, the thing to remember about it is that as soon as it dries out, it stops working. And it's not like where you encapsulate hair in a foil and it's just there incubating. When you use balayage, it has more room to breathe. So the lifting is not going to be as intense. And how you apply the product, the thickness and the density of that product is going to contribute to the lifting power of it. So as you can see, as I get to the top of the hair, like where the scalp is, I am really diffusing that product out because I don't want a ton of lift there, but I want it to be a nice gradual strength being brought on the ends. You can see I take that piece of plastic and I fold it in half at the very top to give it more strength, and it tends to stick a little bit better. I find that Stretch Light plastic wrap is really the best for balayage. I've tried a bunch of different ones, and I get my box at Costco. I used to think that the 3000 was a bit too much, but I really like how consistent it comes out. It feeds a lot nicer, and the plastic, the way that it clings is just perfect for balayage. I find it to be the best plastic wrap, and because it has its cutter, that really helps also. I'm going to go back into the diagram in a minute, but as you can see, the reason why I picked the pattern that I want for my balayages is that the triangles help to bring strength. So as you can see, they're intersecting triangles. And what that is going to do is it's going to bring a lot of strength in different directions. And I kind of like to call it like my little star pattern that I use. And it just helps to diffuse light and bring strength. So you're not going to have strong, harsh lines as it grows out. It just grows in and blends in really nice and beautifully.
Do me a favor, if you're finding value in this content, please like and subscribe.
So I work most of the time with my Framar brush. One of the things about the Framar brush that I never do is I never put it in the bowl where the lightener is. I use another brush to load my paddle. And that's like super important to keep in mind because you want to keep your tools nice and neat, especially when you're working with balayage things, because it's all open air and you're working on one large chunk of hair, you can get messy really quick. So keeping your tools nice and neat is really helpful. And as you can see, I'm like laying the product down and then I'm taking my time to like pat it in and get all those harsh lines or any kind of blips nicely blended out. I am back combing and I find that to be very helpful as I am putting the lightener down. Now I will be working on doing more videos on balayage. This is just sort of my basics. And as I'm laying it down, you can also see I'm taking my time to make sure that I put enough product on. And where you can kind of see how nice and thick it is getting, that's going to lift very nicely. Okay, in a second here, you're going to start to see that I am picking up another brush. You can see that I'm placing it on the paddle. And I do like this extra long Framar paddle. I really like the texture of that paddle, to be honest with you. I think it's actually better than the black paddle. So I bought both paddles in a 2-pack. And I didn't really have much hope for the orange paddle, but the more I use it, the more I like it. For some reason, it just grips the lightener better, and when I pull it off of the paddle, it just, I don't know, I just like the way it grabs onto the lightener. I feel like it works better. But no, it's really long. And as you can see, I'm using that little sponge there to sort of blend out some lines. That helps saving time. And as you can see, when I put my lightener on the hair, I'm patting it on the top of the surface. I'm not trying to smoosh it into the length of the hair. I'm laying it on the top. And the more product that lays on the top and causes it to like crust, the better the lift will be. You see, it's all about saturation and the variations of saturation with balayage. How it is so different from using foils is that when you put the hair in a foil, a lot of times it's fully saturated with lightener and then it's trapped in the foil, so those ammoniated gases lift the hair. And with the heat of the scalp, a lot of times too, it'll really help to bring that hair up in a brightened state. Where when you are using balayage, the reason why it's different and you don't have to worry so much about 40 volume when you're using it is how you saturate the hair, and the way that you lay the product down really helps to give you varying degrees of lift. That's how you can get a very subtle highlight, because as you are working towards the top of the head, you're putting the product on a little more dry and a little less as you're getting to the scalp area. But when you start to bring it down towards the ends, you're building up the strength of the lightener, and that's where you get the power of where it looks like the sun did it. Okay, in the diagrams, it's going to show you what kind of pattern I use the top section. So that's the view of the top of the head. And as you can see, there's I'm working, instead of working in V's, now I'm working in triangles, and I'm just placing that product so it diffuses very nicely through the back section, looking very natural. So from this point on, I am no longer going to be working in V's, but I am going to be working with triangles as a way to build strength around the face. I'm working on the plane of it, so as the hair folds down on both sides, it adds just a soft diffusion and adds a very natural look to the way that the hair is lightened. And I'm just building the strength as I get, closer and closer to the ends. And I'll show you, see, I'm painting down the plane of that triangle, so it just adds a soft, subtle blend. And I'm creating most of the strength in the center part of that triangle. So in this diagram, you're going to see how I'm using the triangles around the face. I'm taking that temple section right there, and I am painting just that whole section in one bit. And so because Michaela didn't really want a ton of blonde, she wanted to still be pretty close to her natural color. I just really made sure as I was applying the lightener that I didn't go too crazy with it. So I'm not adding a ton of blonde in through there. So my sections are just, a good size. So on the top of her head, I'll probably do 4 little sections. Sometimes I'll even do 3 at the top. And I'll have that diagram that we can refer again. When I do the very top of their hair, where their part is, I tend to herringbone the top part, where it's not lining like straight up, because in nature it's not going to line up like that. As you can see the diagram. See how I've herringboned the very top? And then of course when I'm doing the top of the head, I spend a lot of time in this area because it's where they're going to see it. It's that piece that we all talk about. So you really want to make sure as you're doing the front that you just take your time and you use caution, because you don't want to leave any blips or dots in the middle of that strands, especially around the face. And I always check the underneath part too of this, because you want to make sure that it's blended nicely, so when you curl the hair you don't see any weird hard lines. And so the good thing about balayage is that you really can take your time. An average balayage for me takes about an hour with this particular length of hair. If it's a little bit longer, it might take me an hour and 15 minutes. So whenever I'm scheduling a balayage, I will take about an hour and a half for application time. And then I like to set them for 45 minutes after that for toners and stuff like that. And then an additional 20 minutes to style. So in the end, when it's all said and done, it's going to take me about 3 hours to do balayage like this. So you want to make sure that you schedule your time accordingly. When I first started doing balayages, I practiced a lot on a mannequin head and, some family members, of course. As you get more and more familiar with it, you'll become better at placing the lightener and have more control. But just remember to not start at the top. You want to start in the center of the strand and then move it towards the front. So some things to remember when you're doing a balayage. A 40 volume is not really a 40 volume, it's more like a 20 volume. And it lifts depending on how much you saturate. So I really like the way this came out, and I really hope that you like these tutorials. I'm going to be making some more.